Hi, and welcome back to the space. I am so excited to talk to a beautiful human being that I have with me by the name of Kristin DiCarlo. And I'm going to let her introduce herself so I don't mess up all the wonderful ways she shines in this world. Kristin, will you just introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. Thank you, Sadie. So my name is Kristin DiCarlo, and I am a nurse practitioner and a life coach, coming in from Ontario, Canada. And I'm really happy to be here today and have this conversation with you. So thanks for
Thank
having me.
Yay, thank you for being here. Kristen, I just wanted to ask a little bit more about how did you make the journey and the leap from being a traditional healer, practitioner to now this much more like integrative, I would still say healing modality that you're offering that's so much more holistic and we can maybe get into that a little bit more. But how did you make the jump? What was the story behind it?
I wish there was like one moment or one simple jump, but it's kind of been like a little bit of a like a uneven path. Really, I started my journey in traditional healthcare back in like 2004 when I became a nurse, and then I became a nurse practitioner in 2007. And looking back, like I always had this desire to help people, and I think like many of us enter healthcare because of that, right? And initially, I focused on treating for sure, like the physical person. I thought of illness. We want to heal people, even though I always understood, and a big part of my nursing training was understanding that people are not just a physical body. There's so much more than that. Over time, though, I realized how true this was. And working in healthcare and in my NP role for lots of years, different places, different specialty areas, I realized really deeply that true health encompasses so much more than just physical health. And really, what I think for me was most uh, important was to recognize that physical and emotional well-being really do have such a profound impact on health and recovery and healing. And so often there's just not space in the conventional settings that we practice in. Not that there's not, and it's not recognized. Of course, it's recognized as important, but it's just not the focus. And this realization inspired my transition to eventually create what I have now, which is a business called Mind Body Wellness. Pretty straightforward. You're talking about the wellness of the physical and the emotional space. So I wanted to create a space that embraced a truly holistic approach and really that bridges the gap between the mind and the body, between mental and physical health in a unique way.
I love
So I
that.
slowly started integrating other practices like mindfulness, stress management, lifestyle medicine, community support, along with traditional medical approaches and traditional medical care. And of course, coaching being a big part of that and sort of like the secret sauce that holds everything together, that ties it all together. And that's the master tool that I use and that I teach my clients to help them with everything from improving their confidence, their resilience, managing their emotions, managing transitions, relationships, work issues, and of course, really helping them create meaningful, sustainable change in their lives.
I love that. Thank
That's
you
how I
so
got here.
much. Yeah, that's amazing. All summed up into a few minutes. The whole many years, a couple decades worth of
Yes.
journey.
Yeah. Mhm.
Thank you for sharing that. As you were speaking, I have so many questions I want to ask, but I just want to pause for a moment of reflection and celebration of you, specifically in what you are embodying and what the journey you just walked us through, because I think that some people might feel maybe frustrated or see and know that something is maybe missing in how they experience something, or they have an idea of how to make it better. And we're so often confined to what already is established by society, by culture, etc. And just to recognize that it can be as simple as, you having the courage to say, this doesn't feel balanced to me, in this space. There's nothing wrong with it, focusing on the body, and that the mind is like an adjunct or a supplement, but I have this other idea about how it could be. And I have a vision and a dream, and that speaks to me. And like, I think you just being you, you just having your lived experience, you just having your wisdom, you just expressing that disrupts society. It disrupts the norm. It disrupts society. And by disrupting it, look how now you have made space for a whole community of people who really needed you to have the courage to stand in your truth or your vision. And I just find like moments like that to be so inspirational and such good reminders that, the world needs us exactly as we are, that the way that you see this world is no accident, and that you honoring that not only made a huge change in your life, but now all the hundreds of women and men that you have helped just by doing something as simple as living in your authentic expression without needing it to be like edited or fit into the norm. And I just wanted to take a moment to like see that in you and celebrate that in you, and to anybody who is listening to see you as an example of what is possible.
Well, thank you so much, Sadie. I think like it's so true what you're saying. We and you and I were talking about this before we started recording this, today, that we don't, the path is not always what we think it will be, right? I think we enter our careers or our lives with sometimes a very clear vision, decades ago for how it's going to go. And then we change and we evolve and we learn from the people around us and from what we see. And the more we can be attuned to our own voice and our own vision, I think the more potential to end up where we're supposed to be, essentially. And
Uh,
it doesn't always look like what we think. And that
yeah.
does take courage, because it's definitely, stepping outside of the, traditional box in a lot of ways. But thank
Yeah.
you for putting that out. I appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. And also just to say, how much are you also living and breathing the kind of coaching mindset of like mindfulness and curiosity of, even in just your expression right now of it's not always how we think it should look, but like where's the exploration in that? Where's the fun in that? Where am I making it mean that, gosh, this isn't going to work versus like, oh, we could make a whole new world work. And how
Yes.
much is our own, yeah, agency and meaning making. And I was hoping you could speak a little bit more to what you were alluding to before, that in one kind of healing space, the mind maybe wasn't elevated to the same degree as the body. And this space that you've created, mind body wellness, that sort of the glue that holds everything together is that ability to navigate the mind, the body, life experiences, and how much maybe we're not even aware of that and that being available to us and the power in that, even though it seems simple, it's like a recurrent or it's an undercurrent into everything. And could you speak a little bit more about like what does that mean to you, or what do you see the impact that it has on your clients?
Yeah, I think that's a great question for sure. And we know that the mind is, you know, not separate. We know that our brain is an organ, it's part of us, right? But we're so much more than a physical being. It's also connected. So what I have found is it's really difficult to work on physical health and healing without addressing our mind, right? Because all change will come from our mind, that desire and that drive and that self-belief that's required to change our life in the way that we want it to go. And then on top of that, physical health is so important for mental health too. It's all so linked. So working on both of it, both aspects at the same time, I think is really, really key. And traditionally, uh, there can be a big gap there, right? Sort of recognizing like mental health is a separate specialty than physical health, traditionally. And we know that they're not different. We know that it's so important, but what I try to do is to like bridge that divide, right? To focus on both and to work on the foundations of physical health along with the foundations of mental health and emotional health and wellness so that we can thrive in both areas. In my opinion, we don't have one without the other. We can't have physical health without emotional health. We can't have emotional health without physical health. And it's all so important. And recognizing, I think, the power of our mind in creating changes and creating that experience that we want most is so, so critical. our thoughts, how we start, how we look at the things that happen in our lives when we are faced with physical challenges. How are we viewing that? Uh, that's where coaching and, the emotional work is so, so key, I think, for helping us live lives that feel whole and healthy in whatever we define that for ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. And I love the way too that you're expressing it in such a synergistic,
Mhm.
supportive manner. Because I think sometimes people can get really overwhelmed that life is busy and they have a lot of things they need to do. And like, I can't even make time for myself, let alone like take a run or do yoga or meditate or whatever. And it seems like now I have 10 more things on my plate. But really, what I hear you saying is that everything is so interconnected, and even we might not appreciate it, but when we tend to one area of our life, that it can be supportive in other areas of our life. And it's not that we're doing, having like to have 10 different focuses, but we just are this integrated whole person. Um, I'm struggling with how I'm trying to reflect this back to
No,
you.
it's perfect. I know exactly, what you're saying, I think. And it's also just leaning into that too and understanding like how to be in your own body and how to be with yourself such a big part of this. And
Mhm.
in our busy world, so many of us can relate. We have families, we're working, we have all these different roles, and we're in many cases excelling at a lot of it, even though we may not always, see it that way. But we're somewhat detached from ourselves, just kind of not present in our body, not able to be present with our own minds, feeling like our mind is like sometimes running the show without understanding how to sort of be in the driver's seat of all of that. So that's really what my work is about, and in a gentle way, leading you back to yourself and what you want most, and recognizing that wisdom that we all have, and that clear voice that's inside. We just don't always hear it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's so beautiful. And if there's someone listening who thinks like, gosh, I want to get started today and I can't wait to work with Kristin or do this work, but what are some simple ways or tools or any recommendations you would have that people could just start even in this very moment, while they're listening or after they're done? Is there any way to attune, sort of, as you're saying, back to their knowingness or be present in their body? Or what are some simple ways they can reintegrate that?
I think it's really the first step, and probably this the hardest and the simplest place to start is to slow down just a little bit sometimes, right? I remember a time when I was going from thing to thing to thing to thing, and some days I still do that, to be very clear. But when there was a lull, even for a moment, it was almost as if what do I do now? I didn't know how to be with myself. That constant buzz of needing to get things done and needing to be busy and checking my phone and, constantly thinking about the next thing. But learning how to be in that moment with yourself without all those distractions is really scary for a lot of us, because what happens when we do that and we stop for a moment, then we're faced with our own brains, we're faced with our own thoughts, and we're faced with our own feelings. A lot of times those aren't always amazing feelings. Sometimes there's, a lot of hard emotions there. And learning how to navigate that does require us to be able to pause. And I think that takes a lot of courage. It's not the way the world is now, right? So I think that's probably a really good starting point. And there's so many ways to do that. It will really just depend on you, but I really think there's a lot of power in just that pause. When you have your coffee and you go outside in the morning and you want to be, checking your phone, even just not putting not being on your phone for a moment and just sitting there and breathing. But just notice how uncomfortable that could be if you're not used to that level of like silence and presence with our own minds. It can really be uncomfortable. But I think that's where all the growth comes. That's a really good starting point. I think if we want to see what we're avoiding sometimes in our life, we just don't do the thing that keeps us busy for 5 minutes, and there it is, right in our right in our face, is all the areas that we need to kind of work through and pay attention to.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, such wise advice. And yeah, you're right, whether it's scrolling or overeating, over drinking, over people pleasing, that how can we be curious about why we're doing it? Is it really just because we want to take a moment to really appreciate this beautiful picture on Instagram or enjoy this cookie? Or is it like we're saying, because we're just trying to fill the space because it's
Yes.
uncomfortable to be with ourselves. And what kind of message does it hold for us? What kind of invitation does it hold for us? And not seeing it as so scary.
Yeah, I love that. Right? What kind of invitation does it see? And it's not scary even though it's uncomfortable, right? But I think the things that we're not used to, those are the things that we're afraid of a
Yeah.
lot of the time.
Kristen, you are so radiant and full of just this beautiful journey that you've gone on. And I was wondering if you could share any other insights or wisdom that wanted to come through, whether it's your own personal journey going through all of this or working with so many professional or working with so many people on their journeys. Are there any pearls that you've picked up along the way?
Oh my gosh. So what I want to say is, the entrepreneurship in general, but I think for me, it's been entrepreneurship, but I think uh, it's not only that, it's any kind of change or growth. It can be like a new work role. It can be a shift in some kind of, life circumstance. Anything that pushes us into an uncomfortable arena, so to speak, right? I think it's an area that really will highlight and bring the spotlight to all the personal work you still have to do, right? Change helps us grow that way. And I think for me, my like professional evolution has really been the thing that has brought all of my stuff to the forefront, right? All the areas that I still need to grow and where I have work to do. But what I really want to point out, and I think the biggest learning for me personally, professionally, and what I see with a lot of my clients is that I think the importance of community is something that we need to talk about, right? Who you choose to surround yourself with, who you choose to be influenced by, what we're putting into our minds, the people that we, choose to have in our circle is so powerful and important. And I think that it's really important to be really intentional with that, right? It matters so much, choosing to surround yourself, especially in your closest circle, with people that, remind you of your value, see your value, people that remind you of how far you've come and who inspire you to keep going. Like someone like you, you have that effect for me, like you inspire me and motivate me. And those positive forces in the world, I think are so, so important to have in your life. What I found is a lot of people today, we're so connected, but we're lacking community. We're lacking those deeper connections that I think is sort of like a void for many of us, right? We're busy, we have full lives, we got a lot going on, calendars packed. But when you really think about it, do you have those communities that um where you feel like you fit, where you feel like you belong? And when that's not there, I think it's a really important area to focus on is creating that and learning how to create that in your life.
Yeah, I think you're such a great reminder. And yeah, the double-edged sword of the virtual space is like it's so available to us, but you're right, if we don't do it with intention and purpose and really the sense of like crafting and co-creating this space for ourselves, it can just become another like filler. And yeah, it's been striking to me over the past year how much I've really tried with intention on my podcasts, on my like the podcasts I consume and the Instagram followers I follow to just clean it all up and
Mhm.
only have it be people that like inspire me or that I want to be like or that shine really bright so then I can see that and feed myself with that. Every time I look, it's only filled with those examples, or every time I listen to something, it's only something that nurtures my soul. And yeah, trying to create that with more intention than just like, oh, I'm going to watch a stupid show or something empty. And not to discount that. There's certainly moments where we
For
need that
sure.
too,
Yeah.
that
Absolutely.
disconnection. But I
Yeah.
think I really like your point about doing it with intention and actually being a part. It's like not the community can't always come to you. So how can you insert yourself? How can you choose your community, your people, your family, your tribe with that, with your values and your heart leading the way and helping you choose when you have an infinite world available to you.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's like I said, we're so connected, but some of those like basic, one of the most basic human needs, I think, is that need to connect and to be part of something larger than us. And it doesn't even have to be at a large scale, right? But having those connections, or creating those connections, I should say, in your life that circle around you in your life, in your career, in your business, that um, is full of people who, help you grow and root for you and accept you, and is like that, almost like that safe place, is really, really critical, I think, when we're looking at like emotional healing and emotional wellness and like a full, fulfilling life, right? And I love what you said too. It's not just, it's learning how to put yourself out there for that, how to create it, and how to even know who you are and what you want, so that you can, intentionally cultivate those spaces in your life
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
sitting back and waiting for that to sort of, come to us. But yeah, I just think the power of community is is a really amazing thing.
Yeah, I think it's always such a dance for me. We're talking about like receiving, creating, self-reflection, community, and there's always kind of like this dichotomy that we live in, or these two extremes that we live in. And, even what you're just saying, like you have to know yourself first to then know which community you're gravitated towards. Or if you don't know yourself, what a beautiful opportunity to use the community as a mirror and figure out what in this resonates with me and I want to keep, or what's not for me, and use it on that constant, I feel like constant dance between the self and the collective and the self and the collective. And I was just wondering, how has that journey of like your personal journey, and yet you work in a community and you have constant feedback
Mhm.
along your path and along your growth. And I would imagine that your clients bring you the same. They're coming to you to be guided on a journey inwards, but yet we live in this world that's outside of us, that's constantly telling us who to be and what parts of ourselves to hide, or et cetera. And that's how we got here. That's how we need your help, Kristen. And I'm wondering what you have to say about that constant balance between kind of the humility to listen to what others say, but also the strength to hold on to knowing what we have to say about us.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, looking back on the whole process, and when I reflect, like in my professional, let's just stick with the professional realm here, right? Where um, there's been a lot of pivots, over time. And I think that that happens, for us, like we talked about in the beginning, we start off thinking about our life, it's going to go this certain way. We're gonna, check all these boxes, hit all these goals, and then we get there and we're kind of like, okay, now what, right? And I think, for me, one of the main things has been like being willing to be flexible and open, and kind of letting the vision evolve, right? Because as you grow, what you want changes, you change, right? And now I think about it as like this vision that I had for my work and my life. It's like a working document as opposed to like a, art on the wall, right? It's ever changing. And that ability to embrace the change and not be afraid of it, and the uncertainty that comes with that, has been huge. What I found is that things rarely go the way that we think they're going to go, exactly the way we think they're going to go, especially in the beginning. It's not always like that. So it's important, I think, to be open and flexible. And when I say open to hearing from other people too, open to the experiences of, others, and learning from others, and letting yourself be inspired by others, while at that same time being linked to that inner voice, that like your own vision as being something separate, and your own path being separate than other people as well.
I
Yeah.
just want to say, with the way that you said that your life is like a living document, it's a living piece of art, that struck me so deeply. That's so beautiful. It's just such a soft, like, allowance and embrace of the evolution. It's like, you're not tied to this finished product. And it's such a beautiful perspective. I love those words that you shared.
Thank you. Thank you. And listen, for someone who, I always joke that I started out, in my life as like a type A plus, like a type A to the extreme, and now I'm more like a B plus. Like, sort of being able to like roll with it at the same time, keeping my eyes on the vision, has been like, like a learning process. Because I think with with being open to change and to growth in our lives, it requires us to be comfortable with some level of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And I think as humans, we're always wanting to know how things are going to go,
Yeah.
and we just can't know that.
Yeah.
But when we realize, oh, wait, I actually can survive this. I can survive when things are hard. I can survive um, not knowing how things are going to go. I can survive change. Then we become so resilient. We become so like this deep level of self-confidence that just comes from that learning that way. Um, is such a powerful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to return back to something you said earlier, because I find that sometimes, especially maybe women, have a hard time with like, they always want to stay like too open to what everyone else has to say.
Mm.
And it's kind of maybe sometimes this imbalance of like, oh gosh, if I can't be open to what they have to say, then I'm going to be missing something, or I'm going to be like, um, I'm going to be too proud, or I'm going to be too self-important. I'm going to be like somehow I'm going to, hurt my patient or hurt whatever it is. It could be outside of medicine too. And I'm not discounting other people's opinions, but I do think that for certain identities, there is this constant external validation that like we have to always be open to everything that is coming our way. And there is kind of no room for that self-sourcing of internal validation of what we think is right or what we should do. And it's almost like this fear that if we don't listen to the things outside of us, that we're either wrong or we're going to miss something or we're going to miss an opportunity to grow. It's almost like a default that we're wrong. I don't know if you have encountered the same.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. And I think we're just going to socialize that way, right? To sort of um, see validation as a really good thing. And it really does feel good, right? To have validation. And I think a lot of, as a maybe you can relate to this too, as a like a medical provider, like as a clinician, we're kind of like, we're achievers, we're used to this. You go into healthcare and everyone knows what this is, everyone understands this role, and your work is really valued, in a lot of circles, right? So it creates uh there's some safety in that. It just feels like, oh, my value is recognized, and I think a lot of that is subconscious. But when you're trying to build something new, and this could be life or business, when you're following your own path, your own journey, and you're deciding what you want, and it may look different than what you expected or what other people may think is the right journey for you, maybe you're the only one who sees your vision in the beginning, right? And what I think is really powerful is learning to release that need for validation from others. Not everyone will understand you, and I think that's okay. That's okay. And really, that's hard work. It sounds very simple, but it's kind of like the work of like separating from our ego in some ways, and learning how to be okay with uncomfortable emotion and judgment, and
Yeah.
just being okay in that space with who we are and what we want. And that's our deepest work, right? Not everybody will grasp your idea. Not everybody will understand you. And that's okay. Releasing the judgment of them about that and about you is a really beautiful move, right? Because when we can release from that, I think then we're not slowing ourselves down anymore. So the only
Yeah.
validation that you need is from yourself, even though validation from other people, of course, like we have to recognize it. It feels great. Like we love it, but we don't need it. We don't
Yeah.
need it.
And I,
And I think when we also let ourselves go on our own path, we're also showing other people, like we're giving others permission to be themselves too, and to do the same thing. So it can be like very inspiring to others to see uh, you stand in the truth of what you want and who you are. It's it's not selfish. It's like a very inspiring, motivating thing for other people to see, I think.
yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Yeah. That's what I wish to reflect about you in the beginning, saying that,
Mhm.
how you being in your exactly who you are is inspiring to others. But when I talk to people about this idea of internal validation and kind of like letting people judge, and trying to release this idea of external validation. People always, I think they like have a taste for it and they want it, but the next question is always like, how? How do I do that? How do I let it go? How do I make it not matter so much? And I was wondering what your take or perspective would be. Like, what are the core ingredients? I think some of them you already touched on just a moment ago about, kind of like allowing, expanding your idea, what's possible, allowing for other people to be themselves. But I was wondering if you had it boiled down to like any core take home tools or practices that people can start in this quest to rebalance the validation, if anything, or let it go, the external validation. How can they do that?
I think there's a few parts to this, but one is to, like I kind of mentioned, to be okay with the discomfort. Like being okay with uncomfortable feelings and experiences is is such a space for growth because sometimes when we're doing the work of I want to get to this point where I don't care what anybody thinks about me, is that really a realistic place to get to, right? Will there ever be a time when we really don't care about what other people think? I think, most of us will to some degree because we have empathy and we're linked, we're interdependent beings, right? We're not just separate. So maybe that's not the goal. I think the goal is to um, have your opinion of yourself be the most aligned one, right? And that can sound really terrible if you look at it sort of like it can be taken as like a selfish view. But what I find is that when we are acting from who we want to be and we're okay with the decisions we're making and we're guided by um, the things that we value the most, when we're guided by our values, we always show up as most of the time show up as our highest self, right? So I think part of it is learning that receiving judgment from others might be uncomfortable, and that's okay, right? And a big part is also letting go of that uh, need to have others agree, right? And to be okay with other people maybe not understanding you completely. That's okay. Not judging them for that and not judging us for that. No one's wrong in that situation. But there's something really, really empowering about that is just allowing others to have opinions and allowing yourself to have opinions and not making it mean anything bad, right? And to do that sounds very beautiful. And like you said, very like, we get it logically, but when we start to do that work, what we find, I think a lot of times is that it's still uncomfortable. And I think that's okay. I don't know that it's realistic that we'll get to the point where if somebody, especially somebody like maybe close to you, has some feedback, uh, it might still sting a little bit. And that's okay. You can handle it, is what I want to say, right?
Yeah.
And ironically, I think if we view feedback as an opportunity to learn and to connect, then we approach it completely different, right? What about this conversation? Can is there any truth to it, right? Is there something that's coming up in you in this conversation? Is it an area that you maybe want to grow through or look at? Like, how can you use that opportunity in your own growth and forward movement, right? And not seeing it as just a threat uh, is really a new experience for a lot of us. Like I know for me, for sure, when I receive criticism, it still doesn't feel good. Like I'm just being totally honest with that, right? Like we don't like that feeling, right? But it's all how we approach it, right? Making space for other people's opinions doesn't mean that those opinions are true. It doesn't mean that it's not worth exploring either, right?
Yeah.
So that requires, I think, a lot of like a really great relationship with yourself and a level of confidence, even to self-reflect and to see yourself as like a whole person with, areas where we fall short and strengths. And it's not about being perfect.
Yeah, there's so much wisdom in everything that you just said. My mind was going a lot of different places, but I agree with you 100% that the goal isn't to get to a place where you don't care about anyone else's opinion, but the goal is to change our relationship to how we interpret and take in those opinions. And that at the very core of its nature is just like you're saying, our relationship to ourself and that curiosity, that invitation of like, why is this bugging me so much? Oh, because it's a belief I have about me. And now what do I do with that? And how can, like you're saying, can I sit with that and love myself more through it and not use the discomfort to judge myself more that like, see, you're doing it wrong or you can't do it or this person's better, but like more as information to allow the uncomfortable feeling, not allow it to mean anything else about us other than what we want it to be. Just like you're saying, in such a beautiful place of that relationship to ourself. And when we can love and value and see ourself, then it's like the opinions that come to us, we can see value in them too, like you're saying, but also we can elevate our own opinions of ourselves to the same degree. There's not like a misbalance that
Yeah.
only outside knows better and that I don't know better. And you can approach it, like you're saying, with so much more love and just own our shortcomings. Yeah, like absolutely. I'm selfish. I'm gonna own that. and and I can have relief now that I don't have to be, like you're saying, perfect. I can just be human. And
Yes, yes.
yeah, and I'm so much more open to change if I want to change. And it comes from a place of generosity and authenticity instead of like shame and hiding and something's wrong and I have to. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love so much of what you said.
And ironically, when we are able to do that with ourselves, I feel like the door's open to being able to accept other people just exactly as they are too, right? So in many ways,
Yes.
the hardest person that we have to learn how to love is ourselves. And when you do that work, to accept yourself and to recognize that you're human, like you said, you're not good or bad. You know, you're human. Then you have that ability to extend that same grace to other people as well. That we're all human, and
Yeah.
that way, none of us are perfect. And there's that space to love people exactly as they are.
Yeah, I remember like maybe 6 to 12 months into learning to coaching and self-coaching and stuff. I was so surprised. I was on a meeting of I was early career faculty. I'm like a nobody and nothing. I don't, and I'm like I love myself. I didn't even realize how much self-critical thoughts I had, how much judgmental thoughts I had. And I'm on this meeting with all of these experts from across the nation, and they're all sharing about their projects. And I remember genuinely thinking like, wow, you are amazing. And really wanting to like celebrate them without any layers behind it of like, well, what am I going to do? And what am I next? And feeling jealous. Like, and I remember the absence of those thoughts and feelings was such a shock to me. It was subtle, but I was like, oh, this feels really free. Like, really,
Mhm.
like I can see and celebrate this person so wholeheartedly has nothing to do with me or any of my lacks or any of my deficiencies. Like their strengths don't immediately point me to my deficiencies. They can just be strengths that are just strengths. And it was subtle, but I will never forget that moment, that meeting, feeling like, wow, there's a lot of freedom in accepting and celebrating others because I guess I've accepted myself a little bit more. And it was like a surprise almost. But you're right, that same, we train our mind, don't we? If we're critical of ourselves, unknowingly, like we're critical with everyone else. And when we self appreciate, self value, then it's so much easier to see the world with more like honest, free appreciation and value.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that for sure. And it is that like the hardest work, as I mentioned, I think is to do uh it's to change how we think about ourselves sometimes, and it's to love ourselves exactly as we are, even not to convince ourselves we're perfect, but to recognize we're not. And when we do that work, like you said, there's so much freedom in that. It just feels different. It's a different type of energy, and almost like you can experience, like you're saying, you're experiencing and appreciating the other people. You have that ability now to do that with yourself and to experience yourself and to appreciate yourself and then to extend that outwards. And there's I think a lot of freedom in that. And it's when you can really, I think, enjoy your life in a different way and really be truly who you are,
Yes. Yeah.
perhaps for the first time in a long time.
Yes. The gift of what this is. Yes. Thank you so much, Kristen, for all of the wisdom that you have shared with us. Where can people find you?
I have a website. It's www.kristindicarlo.com. And I'm also on Instagram at Kristin DiCarlo NP. And I just also want to thank you, Satie, for having me. It's always a complete joy to speak with you and to learn from you and to share ideas with you. And I really appreciate you inviting me to this space. And I just wanted to express that.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristin. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So, in our ending tradition, we just want to leave you with a couple of questions to chew on. What is your relationship with the feedback that you get from others? Do you see it as more important than your own insight? Why? Is it uncomfortable to sit with your emotions? And why? Is there any space to play with and accept all of your human experience without judgment, with compassion? What would that look like? How would you do that? Okay, wishing you all peace, possibility, and play. Wishing you to feel so supported in this space and so honored to be a part of your soul tribe. Sending you love and see you next week. Bye.